I stared at the email from my father, feeling like someone had just punched me in the stomach. The subject line read, "Financial contribution request," and attached was a spreadsheet with an $8,100 invoice for my brother Tyler's family vacation to Florida. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the itemized list: airfare, hotel suite, rental car, theme park tickets, dining allowance, and even spending money for my nephew's souvenirs. All of this arrived just 3 days after my mother had casually texted that I wasn't invited to Christmas dinner this year because we're keeping it small, just us and Tyler's family. I sat alone in my Chicago apartment, surrounded by the Christmas decorations I'd hung, with such hope, the sting of rejection amplified by this cold financial demand. What hurt the most was realizing that after years of financially supporting my brother while my own achievements went unacknowledged, I was still just a wallet to them, not a daughter who deserved a place at the family table. I'm Susanna Barnes, 32 years old, and a marketing executive at a major consumer goods company in Chicago. I worked hard to get where I am today, putting myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, climbing the corporate ladder through dedication and long hours. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, in a middle-class neighborhood with my parents, Linda and Frank, and my younger brother, Tyler, I always sensed the imbalance in our family dynamic. "Susanna, why can't you be more understanding? Tyler's just having a hard time adjusting," my mother would say whenever my brother, just 3 years younger, would break my toys or disrupt my study time. This pattern repeated throughout our childhood. When I brought home straight, as my report card would be glanced at with a brief, "Good job, honey," while Tyler's C- grades were celebrated with ice cream outings, because he was finally applying himself. The Christmas I was 12 stood out vividly in my memory. I had asked for a telescope, having developed a passion for astronomy. Instead, I received a generic journal and some colored pens. Tyler, however, got the new gaming console he wanted, even though my parents had told me it was too expensive when I had asked for something similar the year before. "Tyler needs more encouragement," my father explained when he saw my disappointed face. "You're already so motivated." I learned to accept this as normal, believing that somehow my independence and achievements meant I needed less love and attention. Even when I graduated high school as valedictorian and earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University, my parents' reaction was muted. "That's nice, sweetie. We knew you'd get in somewhere good," my mother said, before turning her attention to Tyler's college applications. Despite his mediocre grades and minimal extracurricular activities, after college I landed an entry-level marketing position in Chicago and began building my career. I visited Columbus regularly, called my parents weekly, and always remembered birthdays and anniversaries with thoughtful gifts. I believed maintaining these connections was important, even when they didn't seem reciprocated with the same enthusiasm. When Tyler struggled to find direction after barely graduating from a state college, my parents were consumed with worry. I suggested internship opportunities, and even referred him to contacts in my professional network. None of these efforts came to fruition, as Tyler would either not follow through or quit after a few weeks. "He just hasn't found his passion yet," my father would defend him. Meanwhile, my promotion to senior marketing manager went virtually unacknowledged during a family dinner where Tyler's new part-time job at a sporting goods store dominated the conversation. "He's really connecting with the customers," my mother gushed, while my father nodded proudly. Neither asked a single question about my new responsibilities, managing a team of 10 people, or the major campaign I had just successfully launched. I scrolled through my Facebook feed one evening in early October last year, taking a rare moment to catch up on social media during a hectic work week. A post from my cousin Jared caught my attention. It was a photo of him and Tyler at a sports bar with the caption, "Supporting the cuz during tough times." 3 months unemployed, and still keeping his spirits up. I froze, staring at the screen. 3 months unemployed. This was the first I'd heard of it. Tyler had lost his job at the sporting goods store back in July. Yet during our weekly family calls, neither Tyler nor my parents had mentioned this significant development. I immediately texted Tyler, who reluctantly confirmed that yes, he'd been let go due to downsizing, and no, he hadn't found anything new yet. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked during my next call with my parents. We didn't want to worry you, my mother replied casually. Besides, you're so busy with your fancy job, we didn't think you'd have time to be concerned with Tyler's problems. The dismissive tone cut deep. Not only had they excluded me from an important family matter, but they'd also made assumptions about my priorities, without giving me the chance to respond. It was the first time I clearly recognized that something was fundamentally wrong in how my family viewed me. What my parents didn't know, or perhaps chose not to acknowledge, was how much financial support I had been providing to Tyler and his family over the past year. It started with a phone call from Tyler about 15 months ago, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Suze. I hate to ask this. He began using the childhood nickname I hadn't heard in years, but Amanda needs some medical tests. Our insurance won't cover everything, and with Jackson's school expenses, I didn't hesitate. How much do you need? The answer was $5,000. I transferred it immediately, telling myself it was what family does for each other. 2 months later, another call came, this time about additional treatments Amanda needed, another $4,000. Then $6,000 more, for what Tyler vaguely described as follow-up care. I never questioned these expenses. If my sister-in-law was having health issues, I wanted to help. I loved Amanda, a kindergarten teacher with a gentle demeanor who seemed to balance Tyler's more impulsive nature. And my nephew Jackson, now 8, was a bright, curious boy who deserved every advantage. When Tyler called again in February, the request was different. Jackson's having some trouble at his public school, he explained. There's a private school with a great program for kids like him, but the tuition. Kids like him, I questioned. Does Jackson have a learning disability? Tyler was vague. Not exactly, but the teachers think he needs more individualized attention. Public school just isn't cutting it. I committed to paying $8,000 for Jackson's first semester at Lakeside Academy. When I asked for updates on how he was doing there, the responses were always positive, but oddly general. He's really thriving, Tyler would say, without specific details about classes or activities. In April, Tyler approached me about a business opportunity he wanted to pursue. Something about reselling specialty athletic equipment. I sent him another $5,000 as seed money, despite the business plan sounding vague at best. When I inquired about it a few months later, he mentioned it hadn't panned out but offered no details about where the money had gone. Through all of this financial support, I never complained or questioned too deeply. I made good money, had no children of my own, and believed in helping family. I assumed my parents knew about some of this assistance, though Tyler had asked me to be discreet about the amounts. Meanwhile, I continued trying to maintain an emotional connection with my family. Our weekly Sunday calls became increasingly one-sided, with me sharing work stories that received minimal engagement before the conversation inevitably shifted to Tyler's life. Jackson's activities, or my parents' social circle, in Columbus. Last Thanksgiving, I made a special effort, taking 3 days off work to visit. I brought thoughtful gifts, a leather portfolio for my father engraved with his initials, a cashmere sweater in my mother's favorite blue, a science kit for Jackson, and a spa gift certificate for Amanda. For Tyler, I found a rare collector's edition of his favorite childhood video game. I spent hours planning and preparing, excited to reconnect. The actual visit felt like performing for an uninterested audience. My parents barely looked at their gifts before setting them aside. Tyler mumbled a distracted thanks while checking sports scores on his phone. Only Amanda and Jackson showed genuine appreciation. During dinner, I tried sharing news about my recent promotion to director of marketing. That's nice, honey, my mother responded before immediately turning to Tyler. Tell Susanna about Jackson's soccer tournament. The pattern continued throughout the visit. My achievements, stories, and even questions were met with polite but minimal acknowledgement before the focus returned to Tyler Jackson or local gossip. I returned to Chicago feeling emotionally drained, but trying to convince myself that family relationships were sometimes complicated. As December approached, I threw myself into Christmas planning. I purchased expensive gifts for everyone, including a weekend getaway package for my parents to a bed and breakfast they had mentioned wanting to visit. For Tyler and Amanda, I found front row tickets to a concert by their favorite band. For Jackson, I carefully selected educational toys and books based on interests Amanda had mentioned. I called my mother in early December to discuss Christmas arrangements. I can fly in on the 23rd and stay through the 26th, I offered. I've already booked time off work. There was an awkward pause. About Christmas, my mother began her voice, taking on a careful tone I recognized from past disappointments. We're thinking of keeping it small this year. Small is fine with me, I agreed quickly, thinking she meant fewer presents or a simpler meal. Actually, we mean just us and Tyler's family, she clarified. It's been a stressful year and we thought a quiet Christmas would be nice. The implication was clear, us didn't include me. Oh, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, sweetie. Just wanting something low-key this year. 2 days later, she sent a text message that still makes my stomach clench when I think about it. We're keeping Christmas small this year. Just us and Tyler's family. We can celebrate with you after the holidays sometime. No explanation. No alternative invitation. Just a clear statement that the family Christmas wouldn't include me. And then 3 days later, the invoice arrived. I still remember exactly where I was when I got my mother's text about Christmas. Standing in line at a boutique in downtown Chicago, shopping for one last Christmas gift for her. The sales associate had just asked if I wanted the scarf gift wrapped when my phone buzzed. I read the message once, twice, trying to process the casual exclusion from a family holiday. Miss, did you want this wrapped? The sales associate's question pulled me back to reality. No, I said, quietly setting the scarf down. Actually, I don't think I'll take it after all. I left the store and walked aimlessly through the crowded holiday market, surrounded by cheerful shoppers while tears threatened to spill. By the time I reached my apartment, confusion had given way to a hollow ache in my chest. I called my mother that evening, hoping there was some misunderstanding. Mom, about Christmas, I began carefully. Is everything okay? I was planning to come home like always. Everything's fine, Susanna, she replied, her tone matter-of-fact. We just thought a smaller gathering would be nice this year. You understand? Not really, I admitted. It's Christmas. We always spend it together. Well, the house gets so crowded and you know how overwhelmed your father gets with too many people around. Our house had 4 bedrooms and a finished basement. Too many people had never been an issue before, even when extended family visited. I tried another approach. I could come just for Christmas Day then. I wouldn't need to stay over. That's a long trip for just one day, my mother countered. Besides, we've already planned everything. I could stay at a hotel, I offered, hating how desperate I sounded. Susanna, please don't make this difficult. We'll see you another time. After more circular conversation yielding no real explanation, I gave up. I called Tyler next, hoping he might provide some insight. Hey, Suze, he answered, sounding distracted. Can I call you back? We're heading out to dinner. Tyler, what's going on with Christmas? Mom says I'm not invited this year. There was a pause. Yeah, they mentioned that. I think they just want something quiet this year. But they invited you, Amanda and Jackson. Another pause. Look, Mom and Dad make the decisions about holiday stuff. I don't get involved. So you're okay with me spending Christmas alone while you're all together? It's not like that, he protested weakly. It's just 1 year. Maybe you could come visit us in January instead. Every conversation left me feeling more confused and hurt. Was I missing something? Had I offended someone without realizing it? I racked my brain for any incident that might explain my sudden exclusion, but came up empty. With reluctant acceptance, I began making alternative plans for Christmas. I donated the gifts I'd purchased to a local charity. I volunteered for the holiday shift at work so a colleague with children could have the day off. I arranged to attend a dinner hosted by a friend for holiday orphans on Christmas Eve. I was trying to make peace with the situation, though the hurt remained. Then 3 days after my mother's text, an email arrived from my father. The subject line read, Financial Contribution Request. Thinking it might be related to a charity they supported, I opened it immediately. Instead, I found a coldly formal message. Susanna, as you know, maintaining family bonds is important, especially during challenging financial times. Tyler's family has had a difficult year, and we have planned a post-Christmas Florida vacation to help them recover from the stress. As the financially secure member of the family, we are requesting your contribution to ensure this important family healing time can proceed as planned. A detailed breakdown of costs is attached. Please transfer the requested amount as soon as possible to ensure family stability. Dad. Attached was a spreadsheet with an itemized breakdown of expenses for a 7-day trip to Orlando. Airfare for 4 people. My parents, Tyler and Amanda, $2,400. Hotel suite at a resort, $2,200. Rental car, $600. Theme park tickets, $1,700. Dining allowance, $800. Spending money, $400. Total $8,100. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. My exclusion from Christmas wasn't about keeping it small at all. They were planning a family vacation without me, and expected me to foot the bill. What struck me hardest was the email thread visible below my father's message. There were previous exchanges between my parents and Tyler, dating back to September, discussing the trip details. This vacation had been planned for months long before they told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas. My exclusion was deliberate, timed, to avoid having to discuss the trip in my presence. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just being excluded from Christmas. I was being manipulated out of the family circle entirely while still being expected to financially support them. The combination of rejection and exploitation left me gasping for air, sitting alone in my apartment with tears streaming down my face. The cheerful Christmas decorations I'd hung with such care now seeming like a cruel joke. I don't remember much of that evening after receiving the invoice. I know I called my best friend Rachel, my voice so choked with tears she could barely understand me. She came over immediately, bringing wine and taking the phone from my shaking hands to read the email herself. "What the actual hell?" she exclaimed, her indignation momentarily cutting through my fog of hurt. "They exclude you from Christmas and then bill you $8,000 for their vacation. Susanna, this is beyond messed up." Rachel stayed with me that night, helping me work through the initial shock. The next morning, we sat at my kitchen table with coffee, and she asked a question that would prove pivotal. "How much have you given your family over the past few years?" I'd never actually calculated it. While Rachel made breakfast, I pulled up my banking records and began making a spreadsheet of my own. The results were staggering. In just the past 18 months, I had given Tyler and his family over $40,000. $15,000 for Amanda's medical expenses, $8,000 for Jackson's first semester at private school, $5,000 for Tyler's failed business venture, plus various other emergency requests. Additionally, I'd been sending my parents $200 monthly for the past 3 years to help with household expenses after my father complained about rising utility costs on his fixed retirement income. When I showed Rachel the total, her mouth fell open. "Susanna, this is financial exploitation. They're using you as an ATM, but family helps family," I protested weakly. Amanda needed medical care. Jackson needed a better school. Something in Rachel's expression changed. "Have you ever actually seen any medical bills or school enrollment forms?" I hadn't. Tyler had always been vague about specifics, and I'd never pressed for documentation, not wanting to appear untrusting. "I think we should do some research," Rachel suggested gently. What we discovered over the next few hours left me reeling. Through social media posts I rarely had time to monitor, we found that during the time Amanda was supposedly receiving expensive medical treatments, Tyler's family had taken 3 weekend trips to a lakeside resort. There were smiling photos of them boating, dining at upscale restaurants, and shopping at boutiques. More disturbing was finding Jackson tagged in photos from his public school's science fair in April 2 months after I'd paid for him to attend Lakeside Academy. There was no evidence he had ever enrolled there. Then there were my parents' social media accounts, which I rarely checked since they seldom responded to my posts. We found photos of a kitchen renovation they'd completed in August, likely using the household expense money I'd been sending. They had also taken a cruise in September with Tyler's family, a trip no one had mentioned to me. With shaking hands, I called my mother. When she answered, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I got Dad's email about contributing to the Florida trip." "Oh, good," she replied brightly. "We were hoping you'd respond quickly. We need to confirm reservations." "I'm confused," I said carefully. "Why would I pay for a family vacation I'm not invited on?" Her tone cooled immediately. "Susanna, we've been through this. It's a small gathering, just immediate family." The words hit like a slap. "I am immediate family, Mom. You know what I mean. Tyler has a family to support, and that's my responsibility because you're in a position to help. And that's what family does. You have a high-paying job, and no one to spend money on. Tyler has responsibilities. I've already given Tyler over $40,000 this year." There was a pause. "Well, he has expenses you couldn't understand. Children are expensive. Is that why Jackson is still at public school, even though I paid for Lakeside Academy?" Another longer pause. "That didn't work out. And Amanda's medical treatments, were those real? Or was that money for your cruise in September?" "You're being ridiculous," my mother snapped. "If you're going to be so stingy after all we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me, Mom? In the past 5 years, what support have you actually given me?" She couldn't answer. I called my father next, my confidence growing. "Dad, about your invoice. Contribution request," he corrected stiffly. "Whatever you want to call it, I need to understand why you think I should pay $8,000 for a vacation I'm not invited to join." "Susanna," he sighed, as though explaining to a difficult child, "you're a single woman with a lucrative career. You have no real expenses or responsibilities. Tyler is supporting a family on a limited income." "Tyler doesn't have a job, Dad. He was fired in July, remember? Something neither of you bothered to tell me. That's temporary. He has prospects." "What about the $40,000 I've already given them this year? Doesn't that count as supporting the family?" His tone became defensive. "That was for specific needs, like Amanda's medical treatments that apparently involved spa weekends and shopping trips." "You're twisting things," he accused. "Tyler manages that money as he sees fit for his family's well-being. And my well-being? Does that matter to anyone in this family?" "Don't be dramatic, Susanna. You've always been too sensitive." Each conversation confirmed what I was beginning to accept. My family viewed me not as a daughter or sister, but as a financial resource to be tapped whenever needed. The realization was devastating. The final piece fell into place when I reviewed my bank statements more carefully. 3 years ago, my parents had asked me to open a joint emergency account with them in case something happens to us and you need to handle our affairs. I had deposited $10,000 and largely forgotten about it, assuming it remained untouched, except for the modest interest it accrued. The statements showed regular cash withdrawals, always for under $500, always from ATMs near Tyler's home or various casinos within driving distance. Over 3 years, the balance had dwindled to less than $1,000 through dozens of small withdrawals. I called the bank and requested the security camera footage from the most recent withdrawal. The image they sent showed Tyler at the ATM, baseball cap pulled low but unmistakably him. My brother had been systematically draining the emergency account, likely to support a gambling habit that explained his perpetual financial crises. And my parents, with access to the same statements I was now reviewing, had to have known. The magnitude of the deception left me physically ill. Not only had I been excluded from the family while being expected to finance their lifestyle, but they had actively enabled Tyler's exploitation of my finances while concealing his destructive behavior from me. That night, I received a Christmas card from my parents. Inside was a handwritten note. "We expect the $8,100 transfer before Christmas. so we can book the vacation activities. We'll send photos, love Mom and Dad. No Merry Christmas. No acknowledgement of my solitary holiday. Just another financial demand. And the tone-deaf promise to share photos of the family celebration I was funding but not welcome to join. It was the breaking point. The week after discovering my family's deception was among the darkest of my life. I cycled through emotions, paralyzing, hurt, burning anger, crushing sadness, and most pervasively a profound sense of betrayal that made it difficult to function. I called in sick to work for the first time in years, unable to focus on anything beyond the imploding relationship with my family. Rachel checked on me daily, bringing food I couldn't eat, and sitting with me through crying jags that left me exhausted. On the third day of this fog, she made a suggestion. I think you should talk to someone professional about this. I resisted at first, but eventually agreed to a virtual appointment with her therapist, Dr. Marshall. That first session was a breakthrough I didn't know I needed. What you're describing, Dr. Marshall said, after I shared the situation, has elements of both emotional and financial abuse. Abuse. The word felt too harsh. They're my family. Unfortunately, family relationships can sometimes be the most damaging because of the inherent trust we place in them, she explained. Let's look at the pattern objectively. Your achievements and needs have been consistently minimized. Your financial resources have been exploited without reciprocal emotional support. And when you questioned these dynamics, you were dismissed as too sensitive rather than having your concerns addressed. Putting it in these terms helped me see the situation more clearly. Dr. Marshall helped me understand that my family's behavior wasn't normal or acceptable, and that my feelings of hurt and betrayal were completely valid. What do I do now? I asked, feeling simultaneously clearer and more lost. That depends on what you want the outcome to be, she replied. Are you looking to repair these relationships, establish new boundaries, or potentially distance yourself? I didn't have an immediate answer. Part of me still desperately wanted to believe there was an explanation that would make everything okay, that would transform my parents back into the loving supporters I craved, and my brother into someone who valued me beyond my bank account. Another part recognized that the pattern was too established, the deception too deliberate to be explained away. I don't know, I admitted finally. I just know I can't keep doing this. Dr. Marshall nodded. That's a good starting point. Recognizing that something needs to change is the first step. I began seeing Dr. Marshall twice weekly, unraveling the complex dynamics that had led to this point. Through our sessions, I came to understand how my childhood conditioning, being praised for self-sufficiency, while Tyler was rewarded for dependency, had created the perfect environment for this imbalance to flourish into adulthood. Meanwhile, the invoice remained unanswered in my inbox, a digital monument to the broken relationship. My parents sent increasingly pointed texts. Have you processed the contribution yet? We need to confirm reservations. The travel agent needs an answer by Friday. Please transfer the funds promptly. Susanna, this is important family healing time. Don't be selfish. Each message stoked my growing anger. A feeling Dr. Marshall assured me was healthy and appropriate given the circumstances. I spent sleepless nights weighing my options. My initial impulse, born from years of conditioning, was to pay the invoice despite everything to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to be the good daughter I'd always tried to be. But Dr. Marshall's questions echoed. What message would that send? What boundary would that establish? What would change in the dynamic? The answers were clear. Paying would only reinforce that I could be excluded, yet still exploited. It would signal that their behavior was acceptable. It would ensure nothing changed. I began researching family dynamics and healthy boundaries. I read books about emotional manipulation and financial abuse. I joined an online support group for adult children navigating complicated family relationships. The stories I read from others helped me understand I wasn't alone, and that establishing boundaries wasn't selfish. It was necessary for emotional health. Friends provided another crucial support system. Besides Rachel, my college roommate Alyssa called daily after learning what was happening. My coworker James, who had experienced similar family dynamics, took me to lunch, and shared his own journey to establishing healthy boundaries. "It's not about punishing them," he explained. "It's about protecting yourself." Through this network of support, I began to see that I had options beyond simply accepting the status quo or cutting off all contact. I could choose how and when to engage. I could establish conditions for my participation in the relationship. I could require respect as a prerequisite for financial support. As Christmas drew closer, pressure from my family intensified. Tyler texted, "Mom's really counting on that vacation money. Don't disappoint everyone." My father called, leaving a voicemail. "Susanna, this delay is causing problems with the planning. We raised you better than this." The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. They had indeed raised me to be responsible, hardworking, and financially independent. Now they were using those very qualities against me, expecting me to bankroll their lives while accepting emotional scraps in return. 1 week before Christmas, a card arrived in the mail. Opening it, I found a generic holiday greeting signed by my parents with a handwritten note added. "We expect the $8,100 transfer before Christmas, so we can book the vacation activities. We'll send photos. Love, Mom and Dad." The casual cruelty of promising to send photos from a family vacation I was paying for but excluded from crystallized everything for me. There was no acknowledgement of my feelings, no recognition of my solitary holiday, not even a Merry Christmas, just another financial demand disguised as family obligation. I placed the card on my coffee table and stared at it for a long time. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt and confusion that had dominated my emotional landscape began to give way to something else. Clarity, resolve, and a quiet anger that felt strangely empowering. I called Dr. Marshall for an emergency session that evening. "I think I know what I need to do," I told her. "What's that?" she asked. "Stop setting myself on fire to keep them warm." She smiled. "That sounds like a healthy boundary. What does that look like?" In practical terms, I outlined the plan forming in my mind. It wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about reclaiming my self-respect and establishing that I was a person worthy of consideration, not just a financial resource to be tapped at will. "It's going to be hard," Dr. Marshall warned. "There will likely be backlash. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the years of emotional neglect, the thousands of dollars given without acknowledgement, the casual exclusion from family events, and the expectation that I would fund a vacation I wasn't welcome to join. "Yes," I said firmly, "I'm ready." The plan would require courage I wasn't sure I possessed. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. I was no longer waiting for my family to change or for an explanation that would make their behavior acceptable. I was choosing to change the only thing I could control: my response. That night, I slept soundly for the first time since receiving the invoice. In the morning, I woke with clarity and purpose. It was time to stop hoping for recognition and start demanding respect. It was time to fight back. The morning after my decision, I awoke with a sense of determination I hadn't felt in weeks. The paralyzing hurt had transformed into something more productive, a resolve to reclaim my self-respect and establish clear boundaries. I called into work and requested an additional day off to handle personal financial matters. My boss, who had been understanding throughout my uncharacteristic absence, didn't question it. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a notepad, and a cup of coffee, ready to implement the plan I'd developed with Dr. Marshall's guidance. This wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back control of my life and my relationships. I worked methodically through the day, each action strengthening my resolve. First, I logged into my online banking and canceled all recurring transfers to my family members. For the past 3 years, I had been sending my parents $200 monthly for household expenses and Tyler $500 monthly to help with Jackson's activities. Both transfers were scheduled to process automatically on the 1st of each month. With a few clicks, I stopped them permanently. Next came the joint emergency account I'd established with my parents, the one Tyler had been systematically draining for his gambling habit. I couldn't close it unilaterally since it was a joint account, but I could remove my funds. I transferred the remaining $927 to my personal account, leaving a balance of $1, enough to keep the account open but nothing more. The credit cards were next. When Tyler and Amanda were struggling financially 3 years ago, I had added them as authorized users on one of my credit cards, with the understanding it would be used only for genuine emergencies. Reviewing the statements, I saw regular charges at restaurants, gas stations, and retail stores, hardly emergencies. I called the credit card company and removed them as authorized users effective immediately. Similarly, I had co-signed a credit card for my parents 2 years ago when they mentioned wanting to build up their credit score after some financial difficulties. Again, the agreement had been that it would be used sparingly and paid off monthly. Instead, the card was nearly maxed out with charges for home renovation supplies, restaurants, and vacation expenses. I called this company as well and explained I would no longer be responsible as a co-signer after the current billing cycle. For each financial tie I severed, I sent a brief factual email to the relevant family member. I have removed you as an authorized user on my credit card as of today, December 18th. Any new charges will be declined. This decision is final. No explanations, no accusations, just simple statements of fact. The next step was more challenging emotionally. I scheduled appointments with my financial advisor and a lawyer for the following day. With their help, I updated my will and financial documents to remove my family members as beneficiaries, replacing them with several charities supporting causes I valued. I also established a small trust for my nephew Jackson that would become available for his education when he turned 18, accessible only for verifiable tuition and educational expenses, with no possibility of his parents accessing the OT funds. As I worked through these tasks, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from my mother. Have you sent the money yet? The travel agent needs to finalize plans. Susanna, please respond. This is important. Your father is getting frustrated with your silence. Just let us know when you're sending the contribution. I ignored them all, focusing instead on my plan. By late afternoon, I had severed or modified every financial connection with my family. The only remaining task was responding to the invoice. With guidance from Dr. Marshall, I had decided against a lengthy explanation or accusation. Instead, I composed a brief email to my father. After careful consideration, I will not be contributing to the Florida vacation. This decision is final. Please make alternative arrangements for funding the trip. I clicked send before I could second-guess myself. Then I turned to a more symbolic response. I purchased a Christmas card. Ironically, one featuring a family gathered around a holiday table, and wrote a simple message inside. I received your Christmas card and financial request. Enclosed is my contribution. Merry Christmas, Susanna. Inside, I placed a single dollar bill. In the memo line of the envelope, I added Santa skipped me too. I mailed the card feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The message was petty, perhaps, but it expressed the hurt child within me who still couldn't understand why I wasn't welcome at the family table, despite being expected to fund the family celebration. With these tasks complete, I took one final step. I set up email filters directing all communications from my family members to a separate folder. I wouldn't have to see unless I chose to look. I needed space to process without the constant pressure of their demands. I didn't block their numbers. I wasn't ready for that level of separation, but I did silence notifications from them. That evening, Rachel came over with takeout from my favorite restaurant and a bottle of champagne. We're celebrating, she declared. Celebrating what? The implosion of my family relationships, I asked, only half joking. We're celebrating courage, she corrected. It takes enormous strength to stand up for yourself, especially against people who should have been your strongest supporters. You did something incredibly hard today. That deserves recognition. We spent the evening talking about plans for the holidays. Rachel invited me to join her family for Christmas Eve dinner. My coworker James had organized a group of friends for a Christmas Day brunch, and Alyssa was hosting a New Year's Eve party I'd already been invited to. See, Rachel pointed out, you have people who value you for you, not what you can give them. As we talked, my phone lit up with a call from Tyler. Though I'd silenced notifications, the screen was visible from where we. Saturday, I hesitated, then declined the call. Minutes later, it lit up again with my mother's number, then my father's. then Tyler's again. Looks like they noticed the financial changes, Rachel observed. By 9 o'clock that evening, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. I didn't read them, but the notification previews told me enough. What have you done? The credit card was declined. Call immediately. We need to discuss this financial situation. Rachel stayed over again that night, concerned about my emotional state in the face of this barrage. But surprisingly, I felt calmer than I had in weeks. There was a certain peace in having taken action, in no longer being passive in my own mistreatment. The next morning brought more calls and messages, growing increasingly frantic. By noon, I had received voicemails from my father threatening to take legal action if I didn't restore the financial arrangements immediately. My mother's messages vacillated between guilt trips. How could you do this to family? And attempts at manipulation. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of this stress. I maintained my silence, focusing instead on wrapping gifts for the friends who had supported me and preparing for the holidays as best I could under the circumstances. On December 23rd, the day I had originally planned to fly home for Christmas, I received a final voicemail from my father that confirmed I had made the right decision. Susanna, this childish financial tantrum has gone far enough. The Florida reservations are pending cancellation. Tyler's cards are being declined at stores. Your mother is in tears. If you want to be part of this family, you will fix this immediately. The ultimatum was clear: finance their lives without question, or don't be family. It was the validation I hadn't known I needed. Their reaction wasn't about missing me or wanting to repair our relationship. It was about losing access to my money. The clarity was painful, but necessary. That evening, I sent one last email, a copy to each family member. I've made my decision about the financial arrangements and the vacation funding. This isn't a negotiation or a temporary measure. If you're interested in having a relationship with me that isn't based on my financial contribution, I'm open to discussing that in the new year, preferably with the assistance of a family therapist. Until then, I wish you happy holidays. Then I turned off my phone, put on a festive dress, and went to Rachel's family dinner, determined to experience the warmth of people who wanted my presence, not my wallet. Christmas came and went in a blur of new traditions and supportive friends. Rachel's family welcomed me warmly to their Christmas Eve celebration, her mother hugging me tightly and whispering, "We're so glad you're here." On Christmas Day, I joined James and several other colleagues for a potluck brunch, where no one asked why I wasn't with family. They just seemed happy for my company. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed quietly. I kept my phone off most of the time, allowing myself brief periods to check for important work messages, but otherwise maintaining the boundary I'd established. When I finally checked my email after the holidays, I found dozens of messages from my family members, ranging from angry demands to wounded accusations, to eventually confused inquiries about what had prompted my actions. My father's messages evolved from threats of legal action, which any lawyer would have told him were groundless, to increasingly subdued requests for explanation. My mother's followed a similar pattern, moving from guilt-inducing lamentations about ruined holidays to tentative questions about what had gone wrong. Tyler's were the most varied, alternating between defensive justifications of his behavior and hints at apology. I read them all, but responded to none. Dr. Marshall had advised giving myself time and space before re-engagement, and I followed that guidance, focusing instead on healing and reflection. January brought a fresh start. I returned to work with renewed focus, threw myself into a new marketing campaign, and continued regular sessions with Dr. Marshall. I also began volunteering at a financial literacy program for women leaving abusive relationships, finding purpose in helping others establish independence. 3 weeks into January, I received an unexpected call from Amanda, Tyler's wife. Unlike my immediate family members, she hadn't bombarded me with messages or demands. I hesitated, but decided to answer. "Susanna," she began cautiously, "I hope it's okay that I'm calling." "It's fine, Amanda," I assured her. "How are you?" "I'm managing," she replied, her voice tight. Things have been difficult since Christmas. She explained that without my financial support, the family's financial house of cards had collapsed. Tyler had been forced to admit his gambling problem when multiple declined credit cards led to questions she couldn't ignore. My parents had canceled the Florida vacation, losing the deposits they'd already paid. The luxury gifts they'd planned to exchange had been returned for refunds. I had no idea how much you were supporting us, Amanda admitted. Tyler always said the money was from side jobs or small investments. I never knew you were paying for so much, including medical treatments you never received. I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. There was a long pause. I'm so ashamed, she whispered finally. I didn't know he was lying about that. I thought the money for Jackson's school was from a bonus at work, the joint account withdrawals. I had no idea until everything came crashing down. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Amanda revealed that Tyler's gambling had started small sports betting with friends, but had escalated over the past 3 years to casino visits and online poker. My financial support had enabled him to hide the extent of his losses while maintaining their lifestyle. I've insisted he get help, she told me. He started attending Gamblers Anonymous and we're in counseling together. I made it clear this was non-negotiable if he wants to save our marriage. Before we ended the call, Amanda said something that touched me deeply. Jackson misses his Aunt Susanna. He keeps asking when he'll see you again. A small opening, a tiny bridge across the chasm that had formed. A week later, Tyler called. Our conversation was difficult, halting, filled with long silences and occasional flares of defensiveness on his part. But underneath it all was something new: accountability. I've been a terrible brother, he admitted finally. I used you. I lied to you. I took advantage of your generosity while giving nothing back. Why, I asked the simple question, carrying the weight of years of hurt. Because it was easy, he answered after a long pause. Because Mom and Dad always made excuses for me. Because you were always the strong one who could handle anything, while I was the one who needed help. Because I was jealous of your success and resented having to ask for help, so I told myself you owed it to me somehow. It wasn't a complete answer, but it was honest in a way our interactions had rarely been. I'm in therapy, he continued, both for the gambling and everything else. I'm trying to understand why I became this person I don't like very much. We agreed to take small steps toward rebuilding our relationship. No financial entanglements, no loans or gifts of money. Just occasional phone calls focusing on genuine connection rather than crisis management. My parents took longer to reach out. In mid-February, nearly 2 months after my boundary setting, I received an email from my father. Its tone was markedly different from his previous communications. Susanna, I hope this message finds you well. Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking since Christmas. While we initially felt angry and confused by your actions, we've come to realize that there may be valid reasons behind your decisions that we failed to consider. If you're willing, we would like to understand your perspective. We're ready to listen. Dad, it wasn't an apology, but it was an opening. After consulting with Dr. Marshall, I replied with a suggestion that we meet in person on neutral ground, with a family therapist present to facilitate the conversation. To my surprise, they agreed. The meeting took place in early March at a therapist's office in Columbus. I flew in for the day, my stomach in knots, but my resolve firm. The therapist, Dr. Chen, began by establishing ground rules. Each person would have uninterrupted time to speak. Active listening would be required, and the goal was understanding, rather than assigning blame. When my turn came, I spoke calmly about years of feeling valued primarily for what I could provide rather than who I was. I detailed the pattern of emotional inequality, the celebration of Tyler's minor achievements, while my major ones went unacknowledged. I explained how the Christmas exclusion, coupled with the vacation invoice, had crystallized the dynamic in a way I could no longer ignore. My parents listened with varying degrees of discomfort and defensive body language. When they responded, their initial reactions were predictable. My father focused on his intentions, rather than the impact of his actions, while my mother insisted I had always been too independent to need much attention. But as Dr. Chen skillfully guided the conversation, small cracks appeared in their defenses. My father acknowledged that they had come to see my financial success as a family resource rather than my personal achievement. My mother admitted that they had always worried more about Tyler because he struggled while assuming I was fine regardless of circumstances. But being strong doesn't mean I don't need support, I pointed out. Being financially secure doesn't mean I want to bankroll everyone else at the expense of my own needs. I never thought of it that way, my mother said quietly. We didn't resolve everything in that first session. There were moments of tension, periods of frustration on all sides. But by the end, we had established a framework for moving forward: monthly family therapy sessions, a moratorium on financial assistance until healthier relationship patterns were established, and a commitment to more balanced communication. As spring arrived, gradual changes emerged. My parents began asking about my work, and actually listening to the answers. They remembered my birthday without prompting, and sent a thoughtful gift rather than a request for money. Tyler continued his recovery program, taking responsibility for his finances. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, Easter provided the first test of our new family dynamic. I accepted an invitation to dinner at my parents' home with clear boundaries established in advance. The meal wasn't perfect. Old patterns occasionally surfaced, but there was a noticeable effort from everyone to create a more equitable family environment. Over the summer, our therapy sessions continued. Sometimes productive, occasionally tense, but always honest, in a way our previous interactions had rarely been. My father struggled the most with the new dynamic, occasionally slipping into assumptions that I would fund family activities. But when called on these moments, he made genuine efforts to recognize and correct the pattern. By fall, a year after the painful holiday season that had triggered such dramatic change, we had established a new normal. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of tension, but the relationship had evolved from exploitative to cautiously reciprocal. Christmas approached again, bringing with it natural anxiety about whether the hard-won progress would hold. 2 weeks before the holiday, my mother called. "We were hoping you'd join us for Christmas this year," she said, her tone careful but warm. "No pressure, of course. We completely understand if you've made other plans." "I'd like that," I replied after a moment's consideration. "But I'd prefer to stay at a hotel." "Whatever makes you comfortable," she agreed without hesitation, a small but significant indication of respect for my boundaries. That Christmas was markedly different from any family holiday I could remember. The gifts were modest but thoughtful, focused on personal meaning rather than monetary value. Conversations flowed more equitably, with everyone's life updates given similar weight. When Tyler shared news of a promotion at the job he'd held steadily for 8 months, the celebration was appropriate but not excessive. Most notably, when I mentioned my own recent achievement leading a successful product launch that had earned industry recognition, my parents asked detailed questions and offered genuine congratulations. The contrast to previous years was striking. As we sat around the dinner table, my father raised his glass in a toast. To family, he began, then paused, looking directly at me. And to Susanna for having the courage to show us what that should really mean. The moment wasn't perfect or magical. There was still underlying tension, still work to be done in our relationships. But in that acknowledgement was something I had sought for years: recognition, not just of what I could provide, but of who I was. In the years since that painful Christmas invoice, I had learned crucial lessons about self-worth, boundaries, and the true meaning of family. I had discovered that sometimes the most loving action isn't giving in or giving more. It's standing firm and demanding respect. I had found that family isn't defined by unconditional financial support, but by mutual care and consideration. Most importantly, I had learned that being needed isn't the same as being valued, and that true family connections must be built on appreciation for who we are, not what we can provide. As I looked around the table at my imperfect but evolving family, I felt something I hadn't experienced in their presence for many years: peace. Not because everything was resolved or because all hurts were healed, but because I now understood that my worth wasn't determined by their recognition of it. I had found my voice and used it to demand the respect I deserved. In doing so, I had created the possibility of authentic connection not by setting myself on fire to keep others warm, but by standing in my own light and inviting them to meet me there as equals. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Sometimes the hardest part of family relationships is finding the courage to stand up for yourself while still leaving room for healing. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to establish healthy boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it brings some comfort or clarity to those facing similar challenges. Remember, genuine love uplifts rather than exploits, and you deserve relationships that honor your whole self, not just what you can give.